Welcome to another episode of the Ironforge podcast. This is a podcast where I interview clients, entrepreneurs, team members, and investors to hear their unique take on entrepreneurship and the startup community. My name is Chris Roach. I'm, of course, your host, and I'm delighted to say today that I am joined by the co-founder of one of our very first clients, a client that has been featured in The Hustle, G2 Crowd, Morning Brew, and named one of the top 3 influencer marketing platforms on the market in 2020. Mr. Zach Moosbrugger from Trend, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I've been very excited to have you on this podcast. You are one of the first clients with Ironforge, so it's been, one of the originals. It's been a long time. I think getting you on this podcast, I wanted to make sure as we started this that we had our ducks in a row of doing this podcast before we kind of brought you on to tell your story. But if you don't mind starting off, Zach, just tell me, where you're from and really what Trend is and what the company is and what it's evolved into.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in upstate New York, went to school in Burlington, which, wasn't far away, very kind of hippie world, mixed between country and hippie. And then took those experiences, went down to New York City. That's where I got involved, designing websites and apps and things, and got started with CBS Sports. And that's where I met one of the original co-founders of Trend. We were working on some sports gambling products and some fun stuff, but decided we wanted to branch off from there, and start Trend. So we moved from there. It's been kind of a wild ride, but went from so upstate New York to New York City for like 7 years or so, and then moved down to South Florida, and that's actually where we kicked off Trend. And now I'm in San Diego, and a lot of the teams in Texas, where we've kind of it's a long story, so we can kind of unpackage it through this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time when you were working with CPS, were you full-time employed there? Were you? Yeah. So you made that jump and just said, hey, I've got the salary, I've got it good right now, but I don't want to do this anymore. I want to start my own startup. Yeah.
So I actually remember I was walking through the hallways there. CBS was great. It just, Grant, one of the guys that started Trend and really made this happen. He was on vacation and just called while I was walking through the hallways and said, hey man, do you want to do it? And it was kind of, I think it was almost regardless of the idea, I knew I wanted to work with Grant in a different capacity, but also just the age I was at, I was kind of naive and immature to the sense, maybe. Like, I think that could be a benefit. Like, yeah, sure, there was the safe job, but I was just, my risk tolerance was pretty high at the time. So I was just saying, yeah, screw it. Let's take the chance and go. Regardless of what it is, let's figure it out. And the ideas evolved, through taking that risk, because the original idea necessarily wasn't the best, and it's been forced to change and pivot. But I think some of that youth and that naive look at it is what makes it successful in the long run, because you're able to take punches that you don't really expect are going to be there.
And how old were you when you made the jump, if you mind me asking?
Maybe 28 or so, 29.
Okay.
Yeah. 28.
Oh, yeah, because I think that's something that we talked about with some of our current clients, and and even some of our team members that have said, hey, I'm going to come and work with Ironforge. I'm going to leave the job I was doing, and I want to be part of Ironforge. Now, when you're younger, it's often a lot easier to make that jump. Like you say, your risk tolerance is typically a lot higher. You maybe don't have the mortgage, you don't have the wife, the kids, the husband, whatever that is. It's a lot easier to say, all right, I'm going to take a gamble, because at the end of the day, I know I have time to be able to do that. So for any entrepreneurs that are perhaps a little bit older, can you talk about, the steps that you took to kind of reason with yourself and say, hey, I can do this. This is not something where it's going to be that risk. When you first started, what kind of steps did you kind of walk yourself through to be able to really make that leap?
You're saying if I were to start it right now, or because I was in that youthful mindset when I started, so it's hard for me to play differently. But I think there has to be a detachment from your emotion in a way. You have to realize that whether it's riding the roller coaster, whether it's an up or a down, it actually it doesn't really matter like how you're feeling in the given day. If you're going to make changes to stop doing what you're doing and keep pushing further, it has to be the collection of a few months or years of stringing these thoughts together, because you can be riding super high and the next day get chopped down, or vice versa. And your ability to stay disciplined and to stay focused on the course cannot be touched by those emotions, because you'll get drunk off the high, or you'll be crying on the low. So
Yeah.
and both of those things are not work. So you really, I think you have to just watch those things pass by, like sip the wine as it's going up and you're enjoying it, but don't overindulge in success or failure, because sometimes it's just the way the wind blows that either one of those things happen. So I think just staying in the pocket and knowing, okay, are you the kind of person that can detach those emotions from, what's going on around you, and can you stay disciplined to your original plan? If you can do that, and you have this strong itch and desire to take the leap, just, we live once, give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. And where you are now, obviously with Trend, it's very easy to look back and go, great decision. I had a lot of success from doing this, but back then it wasn't called Trend. And like you said, you had to go through a lot of pivots. So what happened? You said, hey, I'm done. I'm going to start, I'm going to start my own company. What was the company called then? And then how were those first couple of months? And then how did you find that you pivoted from there?
Took me a minute to run the original. So when we started working with Iron Forge, it's actually called Verb. But before that, the idea was called Canvas, and it was going to be more of like a Patreon. The idea was to create like subscription services for creators to be able to put, whatever content they have behind a paywall. That evolved to something called Trend, Verb, which was the first iteration of what Trend is now. And that was a really dedicated influencer marketing platform. And, as it's evolved, it's not only has the branding and the colors changed, but with each iteration, the product changes too. And that's been based, the feedback we get, but also when we started Verb, we were kind of running these campaigns, these influencer marketing campaigns for companies by hand. We had all these spreadsheets up, and we're trying to really figure out what the software should be before we built it. So we were searching for, in a lot of ways it could be a backwards way to do things, but it really taught us what to build. We were trying to serve as an agency in this world, and realized all the problems in doing it, by hand, by running these processes by hand. So we learned the path to take through the pain of doing it the old school way.
Yeah, by realizing that there is a problem that needs to be solved, and in living that problem day to day allows you to really isolate how important that is. And a lot of our clients, they come to us, and people always say to us, well, who's your ideal client? And we always say, well, predominantly it's industry experts that are in the industry and are living something day to day. They know what the problem is, and they know that they want to build a solution, even perhaps what the solution is, but actually developing that solution is where they either don't have the capacity or the ability to actually execute on that. So when you're in there and you're living the day to day and you're experiencing that problem, how do you take a step back and go, actually, we can create a solution to this? Or is it just a matter of saying, I can't deal with this anymore, there has to be a better way?
Yeah. Well, in this case, it's interesting because especially when we started, I wasn't an expert on influencer marketing. I was coming from sports gambling. So it was like such a totally different world. And what that did was it forced us to stay more disciplined to the principles of finding what the problem was, because I couldn't necessarily speak the language. I wasn't able to lean on past experience or lean as much on just intuition, because it was something I really didn't understand. So when making, decisions, okay, we actually need to digitize this and build the product. It was the first time, I think, in my career that I had to stick totally disciplined to the script of, looking at the data, listening to people, really being more regimented, because there's, a lot of people say you're not the user. There's these product ideas that you can't necessarily build and build products for your users. But I was working in situations previously where I really, I had a lot of experience in that industry. So I was able to kind of sketch by some of those more traditional rules. But yeah, so to answer the question, I think it got to the point where we realized we had these skill sets, of building products in our previous life. We didn't know this industry. So by cracking into it and running these campaigns by hand, it was just a matter of time before we found we were going to have to build this into a software solution. But we definitely, because of our lack of experience, wanted to experience that pain firsthand before just jumping in and building something. So
yeah, and that's where I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake is they go and they build the software straight away, and it's that mentality of, well, I'll build it and they will come, and then you build it and it's not the right solution, and that's where a lot of entrepreneurs I think fall short. And for Ironforge, I mean, we have a variety of techniques we use. That we have the clickable prototypes, we have the designs, we have the ability to launch some very simple MVPs to test that market traction. But as someone that's been through that firsthand, you had to go out there and get the feedback before you invested heavily really into the actual development, because at the end of the day, you don't know what features are most important. And at this point, when you're first starting off, you don't know which feature is most important to your end client. And if you don't get that feedback, and as simple as that sounds, that's where 90% of entrepreneurs fall short. They don't do that. They think they have the answer. And it sounds like you maybe in past projects, because of your expertise in product design, you maybe think you have aspects and you think you have the answers to it. But in this time, it actually forced you to go out and get answers, which ultimately probably led to this being, one of the more successful outcomes with this, because you had to actually go and get feedback.
Sure. That and then there is one key nugget that just like a bell went off my head when you said it was, if you build it, they will come. That's where enter scene Ramon Barrios. He came into the project, and that is his world. He's totally obsessed with marketing and when I say obsessed, I mean, I really mean it. He's a different kind of breed. He's the kind of guy I'd invest in him 10 times out of 10. There's zero quitting him, and he figures out ways to grow things and to market things when the solution just isn't obvious to anybody else in the room. He finds a way to do it. So that, it's layered. If I were to offer advice, it would be, don't try to build this masterpiece and then expect on day one of your launch, you're all excited, you've got your post ready, you got that one PR thing ready, you're going to click it and it's going to go. You need a team around you that is obsessed with different parts of the process. And for me, that's not what I am at all. So having Ramon come in, and he's our CEO, having him lead us with that mindset of finding these growth hacks and marketing is really so key, because there's so many products out there that are beautiful and they function great, but they end up with no users. So how cool is that? It's good for your portfolio, maybe your design portfolio, but if you can't do anything with it and get it out to the world, what's the point?
Well, exactly. And let's touch on that in a little bit more detail, because you mentioned there part of what you look for in a teammate, and there are 3 co-founders in Trend.
Yes.
So part of what you're saying there is actually the 3 co-founders, you all complement each other in different ways. So you have the ability where perhaps your strength is another co-founder's weakness. How important is it in creating a team? Because a lot of people that come to us are, solo entrepreneurs. They don't necessarily have that team. And a lot of investors, you see it on every news article you can read on investing. Everyone's looking for that team of 3. And that, again, it ticks for a VC, an angel investor. It's just what they look for. So how important is finding that counterpart to what it is that really is not your strength? So for instance, with yourself, it may have been more of the marketing background, whereas on the design you were much stronger. How were you able to find those people that match that? And then from there, how did that allow you to succeed?
The answer to that is actually that's Grant's main strength. He's like the ultimate coach and recruiter. So the teams that he's built, Trends evolved through the years, but a lot of the people on the team are because of Grant. He can see those people sitting there with their skill sets, just raising their hand and no one else seeing them. So he's able to pretty quickly identify talent. And it's not just talent. If we were robots living in an isolated world, that'd be great. But it's also, you need, like, that you're going to war with these people. So you need to be able to, like I was talking about before, detaching from emotions, whether they're good or bad. You need to know that all of the people that you're working with are able to handle those ups and downs, and that you get along with each other day in and day out too. That's almost just as important, because it's such a long commitment towards getting to this goal that you need to really like these people. You need to be able to brainstorm together and, really help each other out too.
And they say that, finding a business partner is harder than finding your spouse, because it's,
I can see it.
And with a lot of people, when they do this, they say, hey, I have this buddy, and he's gonna be my co-founder, and we're gonna do this. And then again, 9 times out of 10, that person is no longer the co-founder, 2 years into the platform, or the startup hasn't succeeded. That you hear the stories all the time. You have equity battles, you have everything in that. And I think one of the things to take from this, if you are looking at finding a potential co-founder, because it's very easy to say, hey, I'll give you 30% of the company and we're going to do this together. But you've got to find someone that is invested as much as you are. And you have to find someone that has that same amount of passion, because otherwise you end up picking up the slack. And then next thing you know, you've given up a percentage of your company, and then it's not what you envisioned it to be. And I think for you guys, you obviously have a very good relationship with that, but that is not the norm with 3 co-founders that start a startup. There is a reason that over 95% of startups fail. And a lot of that comes down to the team and how it is that when you're starting, you have to be so careful with who you're bringing onto your team. And if you are the one that has the most passion, or is the CEO, or whoever that is, you have to be able to have certain metrics that other team members have to hit in order to continue on with this, because otherwise you can leave yourself very vulnerable to issues coming, further down the line.
I agree, man. Yeah. Well said. It's at least half the, you got to have the great idea. You have to execute well, but this stuff is just attrition. It's how long can you keep getting hit and keep going?
Yeah. As I say, everyone's got a game plan until you get hit in the face, and then it's out the window from there. I would like to give a little bit of context, because people are listening to this go, trend sounds great. It sounds like you've had a great story. Let's talk about some of the success you guys have had, because it's by no means a small feat. Do you mind sharing a little bit in terms of, revenue guys you have right now, capital you've raised, just the size of the team, kind of where you guys have gone from, this startup and, hey, we're going to launch this and 3 of us are going to have a great time, to where you guys are at right now and kind of time period that's happened over?
I'll do that pretty quickly. I'll try. So when we built the software, we weren't charging anything. So we're making $0, just burning it. But that, gave us the chance to get it into users' hands and to develop it further, without really pissing people off. They're happy to have a free tool and to test it out and to try things. So that gave us the runway to build a better version of the product and start, selling it. We were selling it on a monthly subscription. Again, to introduce the idea, it's influencer marketing software. So what we do is we connect brands with influencers who will post on Instagram and also create content for the brand that will, be owned by the brand after that they can use in paid social ads or their websites, whatever. So we would sell these subscription packages that would say, all right, you'll be able to work with 20 people a month, sign the contract for 3 months, 6 months, a year. And we were selling those contracts. The chart was looking good in the beginning. And then we realized we had a churn problem, because somebody would get through 19 of their 20 folks and say, hey, where's this other one? They didn't make their post. I want my money back. Or only 15 delivered on time. And why is it late? And, maybe they activated them on the last day of the month, and that's why. But there was all these hurdles that we weren't really delivering on what the customer needed. So at that point, we'd gotten the business up to about 65,000, 70,000 a month. We then decided we're going to chop it and go back to 0. We're going to drop those contracts and we're going to start again fresh. And all we're going to do is sell these credits again to work with the influencers. So maybe it's 20, but instead of 20 a month, it's a la carte. You can use it, you use the credits however you want, whenever you want. You're not forced to use them on this monthly schedule. So we started again, and now last month was our best month with that new model again. We're over 70 there. And that took us, we started January from scratch. So not total scratch, we'd had the product already, but with this new model. So about 70,000 a month where we're at right now. How much have we raised over the course of the whole journey? Around 700,000. Did I miss one of the questions? Did that cover it?
No, I think so. Yeah. I mean, and that again, that takes some courage to do when you're making $65,000, $70,000 a month to suddenly go, all right, guys, this isn't working. Well, hang on a minute. Yeah. And again, so, I mean, two points there, starting off with something for free. A lot of people say, don't give stuff away for free. Everyone says it's all about perceived reality. If you give it away for free, no one's going to value it, and clearly that didn't work for you guys. Though that did work for you, and that philosophy is not applicable to this. So is that something you'd recommend, anyone that's starting to go and just give it away and get users on it so you can get some feedback before you start monetizing it?
I don't know. I can't say that worked for us. That's just what we did. And we're still here, So if I were to do it again, I'm not totally sure I would do it that same way.
Okay.
But it did work for us in this go around. So that's part of it. It's like to give this exact feedback on this is how you should do it. It's sometimes you dodge bullets and sometimes some of the choices you make are correct too. I think, you know, it's not it's maybe 60% was positive, 40% wasn't type of deal.
Mm-hmm.
What we got a lot of great feedback and it really did shape the product. But if I were to do it again, I would have liked to tighten that window down. I think that's maybe a more reasonable response to that. Just make it smaller, start charging sooner. But that time period was great because those people were helpful to get us the feedback we needed and the actual data, not just what they're saying. What are they actually doing? How are they using it?
And that's something that a lot of clients, when we talk to them and say, hey, we want to have these premium features, and they have, you know, $20,000-$30,000 of premium features they want to add onto a platform. And what we say is, before you do that, let's build the version 1. Let's get to market. You know, we refer to it as the IPR, the initial product release. Let's get to market, and then let's look at those analytics and see what features your users actually value the most, because then you can actually build on top of those, and you can see really where you can put that paywall in, because otherwise you're guessing at what the paid features are. So for you guys, you know, you had the free version, you can get feedback and you can say, and again, you can look at the analytics and say, hey, this is clearly the direction we need to go in. Then when you do execute that, like you said, next thing you know, you're making $60,000, $70,000 a month. Then you guys doing that, then you guys realize there's another problem, and you say, actually, we need to start from scratch because we can't scale at this rate. So let's start from scratch, because, you know, $60,000, $70,000 a month is nice, but it's not where you want to be. And that's why, you know, again, when you go back to it, and now hopefully, you know, you guys have the platform that can scale much more infinitely, and you're not going to have those headaches with users and consumers and, you know, just even customer support on SaaS platforms can be a nightmare. It can be completely overwhelming. So to get that ability, you know, quite often it's not going to be your first attempt. And that's where, you know, a lot of people give up after the first go. Even on this, even just since you've launched this, 2 to 3 attempts it takes to really get to a point where you can monetize it effectively. If you can get the users, there are lots of ways to monetize it. You just need to have something that's valuable and people want to use, and they're going to ultimately recommend it and continue to engage with on a regular basis.
Yeah, well said. And part of it too is it's not just a business model. What comes with the business model. If you're selling these monthly subscriptions through larger contracts, you need a sales team, and you need people on calls going out there doing it all, you know, all day to keep bringing money in the door. And what we've really on our side invested in is SEO and content, and we've got a podcast too. I think there's a lot of ways to get the word out that you don't need to scale up this massive sales team. So we've actually, you know, we're removing demos. We've been working on that for a couple months. We show the product as much as we can on the actual website. There's a live demo there. Just trying to get creative in ways, because after getting on a lot of these demos, we realized it was the same 5 or 6 questions every time. But we had 8 demos a day, 8 sales calls a day. So that's not, it wasn't efficient. So it's also the business model affects the team and how the day-to-day goes. And, you know, you get on however many 30, 40 sales calls a week. If you do that for a few months, it starts to, you just start to sound redundant, and you're not really pushing the envelope. That's how we felt. We weren't using our brain to the best of our ability. So that was part of it too. So.
Yeah, and that's what, again, having launched my own SaaS platform, which actually you were very involved with a lot of the design for Recruit Shoot, you know, back 2 or 3 years ago, having done that myself, where we were doing, you know, 20 to 30 demos a week that we were doing, just again, the same questions over and over again, the same demos, to be honest, the same people. It was everything was the same about it. So we just pre-recorded it and said, hey, if you want it, we'll just send it to you. Let us know if you have any questions. And that for us allowed us then to just every follow-up call we went from, we knew they'd watched it. And there are analytics you can use. You can see whether people have watched the entire video, which if you are doing the demo route and you are going to have a pre-recorded, absolutely recommend. Don't get on a call with someone that's watched 10 seconds of the demo. Otherwise, you're going to end up doing the demo anyway. You need to, you know, you can be very selective with that. And then from there, then you start to increase your close rate. Because if you're, I mean, on demos, and I don't know what kind of close rate you guys had on it, we were like 5 to 10% on closes on demos. And it was exhausting. And we were doing it over and over and over again. And just recording, just that little change allowed us to take one less touch point. And that's where with anything that's software related, that's the goal. The goal is to make money while you sleep. The goal is not to be doing demos over and over again. Otherwise, we would go and sell boats or RVs or whatever it is. You know, you would do something physical. So with software, any way you can remove those touch points is always going to expedite your sales process and allow you to hopefully scale in a much faster fashion.
I think nailed again the reason why you stay open-minded. Like, just burn your ego. Just let your original idea was these demos, they're going to make it. And then you learn from doing them so long that you need to evolve and change. And that's what I mean about it being attrition. Like, because, maybe you closed a bunch of sales one week, but the next week you didn't. And you realize that at some point you needed to change and adapt. And that's what I think is the most needed quality.
And just because you've had success doing something doesn't mean it's the right thing either. And
No.
that's something that I learned the hard way, is that you may do something and you may be making decent money doing. Like, I mean, even with your example of doing the, getting to $67,000 a month in revenue and then starting again, you can be doing quite well and it still doesn't make sense. And that's where, again, you need to, like you say, put your ego aside, take a step back and go, this is not scalable. And if this is where we want to grow to, that's fine. We can hire sales guys, we can do this, and this is ultimately where we will be. But to really take that to that next level, sometimes you do have to just take a step back and look at the full picture. And that's something, a lot of our startups and our clients are a little bit further along, they come to us because they're at that stage. They have the product in market. They have something that they have. Yeah, guys, we have success. We have revenue. We're doing, X amount of $100,000 a year. We need to get past that. Our software is no longer doing the job that we need it to. And that's where, again, it's interesting with our clients because there's such a variety of where they're at with the cycle. Some of them come to us with notes on a napkin. Some of them come to us with, millions of dollars in revenue. And that for us is quite interesting because we see it across the board, which means that any of our clients, whatever step you're going to, we've got someone that's just been there. So we're able to kind of consult on that with them as well, which I think is one of the biggest pieces to why you would work with Ironforge rather than a software development shop. It's, if you just want to get something built and you want to pay hourly, you can go there and you can, there are lots of cheaper options to go with, but a lot of the consultation that we provide really allows our clients to be able to take those next steps. Now you are one of our first clients. You were, back 3-4 years ago when Ironforge was nothing but, a two-man shop. Can you kind of talk about just, your experience, obviously starting off being one of our first clients and how over the time things have perhaps changed? Obviously we've grown significantly. We've grown really with you in a lot of ways. How kind of your experience has just changed over the years and really what, how that has evolved since we did start?
Yeah, it feels like we kind of we're in the same graduating class. It feels like we're at the same, because when I'm not saying we've graduated. I'm saying like we're at the same level in school, because when we started, Ian and I were, he was pretty fresh with his skills. I was pretty fresh with mine. And we were just kind of trying to figure this out. He was trying to learn how to develop apps. I was trying to learn how to design them. And through the years, we've evolved our skill sets. Ian's actually become a hell of a designer, but we've kind of grown through the startup school together, in that as I was progressing trend with Ramon and Grant and the team, Ian and Sumner, they were growing the Ironforge. So a lot of the lessons, just the life lessons of that you go through, like those tough points, we were experiencing together along the way. So I think it's not so much, my experience with Ironforge is that it's not just that, you guys are high quality talent and developers. It's that so many people on your team have gone through the experience of trying to start something, that you have insight and advice to plug in and really help along the way. And what's great now, like when I come back with hey Ian, we need to make this update to the app, he's seen every iteration of the platform. Yeah. He's not, he hasn't just built it and walked away. He understands the business and actually cares about it, succeeding. So he can come forward with a suggestion. Hey, what if you try it this way? That's actually, that this might save you 3 hours of development time and be better for the user. So he understands the problem because he's watched it through the years with us, and it feels like he's a member of the team.
And that's what I was going to say then, is I feel like with Trend, we've really become part of the team more than we probably have with any other client, just because of the time that we've been there. And one of the questions that, again, my role with Ironforge is more on the sales. So I'm talking with new prospects and new clients that we want to work with. And they say, well, we can build this, obviously we can build this for you. And they go, that's great. We're going to pay you X amount to do it. And then what happens afterwards? Because I don't have
Yeah.
a full-time CTO. I don't have a developer. I don't have an iOS, Android, web, front end, back end. The overhead associated with hiring the team that you would need to build the products we have and have on a long-term basis is crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
from your standpoint, how has that relationship really allowed you to continue to scale the company, be agile? And, when I tell clients, hey, we are on your team and we will be your partner, can you attest to that is something that has happened
Yeah,
firsthand
it's
now as you
real.
start to scale?
It's real. Yeah, this isn't just an ad. This is real. Ian has, specifically Ian. I haven't worked. Your team's grown so fast that I haven't met
Yeah.
everybody there. But um, with Ian, he's got a really unique ability to hear the problem and not respond with just developer speak. Like it's not
Yeah.
too technical. It's if you're saying I just want the button to do this, he can kind of interpret that in a certain way and output the product to do what you want. And I think he kind of bridges the gap between the technical side and the actual product design. So that's made me not have to. I don't have to get over the top detailed with every single spec and every single word. And it's nice to just have him kind of inherently understand the problem we're trying to solve, talk it through on a quick call, and just kind of pump out the solutions. So that's really been, it's been huge because time is limited for all of us. So the fact that he can have that autonomy and understand exactly what I'm trying to communicate is really big, really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, with any new development shop, you always have that learning curve. We have it with clients that come to us with, pre-existing products and they want to work on it. And we're looking at it going, it's going to take us a month just to get caught up with this. So having a team
Yeah.
that is going to be there for you in the future is going to save you a lot of headaches in terms of just, when the platform does scale, it's going to save you those headaches of going through any potential new developers, any hiring. One of the questions that we do get asked pretty frequently, especially in the sales process, is at some point I'm going to need my own developers. We know that it's not something, as I unfortunately, we completely understand that you're not going to have us as your development team when you're making $500 million a year. It wouldn't make sense. So for you guys have full-time developers and you have a full-time CTO, you have developers on staff as well as working with Ironforge?
We do on the website, yeah. On the iOS side, it's still Ian's world, but we do on the website, yeah.
So over time,
yeah. Yeah. So originally the platform just started on iOS, and we just got a ton of feedback that these people needed a desktop application. So we basically, I wanted to keep some of the streams of thought isolated in a certain way, where we would have this web team going 100 miles an hour just on the web and really owning and understanding the problems there. And then also on the iOS side, really understanding what's going on that side too, because they essentially became two different products that talk together. We used to handle both sides of our marketplace, the brands and the influencers very, equally on the iOS side, but now the brands have this web platform that's taken a lot of the focus away. So we wanted a team just dedicated to that. But in terms of the influencer side, Ian's still all in on that.
Awesome. Well, shifting gears a little bit here. One of the things that you said earlier on is you went for a prolonged period without charging any revenue, which in theory sounds great. You have to fundraise to do that. There's no way around it. If you're not making revenue, you have to have some cash to be able to do that. So in terms of your fundraising experience, how did you find going through that fundraising? And I don't know if it was you personally that dealt with a lot of that or one of your co-founders, but just as the company, what kind of avenues did you explore to actually be able to fundraise to not only build the technology, but then have the ability to say, hey, we can spend 6 to 12 months without making any revenue to test the market feedback?
Yeah, so we were fortunate, and I'm grateful for that. So the Grant's a full-time investor now, but he's got so many ties into that, into the investing world, that we were able to get from some buy-in pretty early. So that's what afforded us the right to do that. So I understand it's not a path that everybody could take. From there, we went through an accelerator, startup accelerator. We got involved with Capital Factory in Austin, Texas. They were great. It's kind of a Frankenstein journey, and that the money came from different sources at different times. it hasn't been a clean process. It's been sporadic, but it's kept us afloat, and a lot of lessons learned through it. So yeah, I think it might not all come at once, all that money that you need. You just have to
Yeah.
stay out there and stay after it.
I say it's very rare I hear from someone that, hey, we're going to go and raise $250,000, and then they call me back 3 months later and they say, hey, we just raised
We did it.
$250,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's the times that's happened of thousands of clients that I've talked with is probably under 10. It's just not something that happens. People go out, they raise 50,000, 75,000. They have a little bit come here, a little bit come there. You can talk about convertible notes and safes, and there are a lot of things that we won't go into too much detail now, that perhaps I'll discuss on another podcast. But from that standpoint, the expectation should not always be that I'm going to go out and raise all this money and I'm not stopping until I do. You need to raise enough to be able to get to that next level that you need to be at. And for you guys, you went through accelerators, you mentioned. Can you talk a little bit just about your experience with an accelerator? First of all, what is an accelerator? Because not everyone listening is maybe as familiar with these accelerators, and really what the value of going through an accelerator offers your business.
Yeah, they're places to get connected with people who have gone through this journey before and who have a lot of advice to share. My experience with this one wasn't too hands-on, honestly. It was this Quake Capital. It was out of Austin, Texas. The group was there. I'm in San Diego right now. But the whole goal is you get a bit of cash up front, and you're connected with these people who have expertise in what you're trying to do. So that they're basically investment firms that are trying to collect talent and grow that talent into successful businesses. So they do that through coaching and through connections.
And they take an equity in your company in exchange.
Yep.
And is that just a straight cash for equity, or?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, each one runs a little differently. In our case, yeah, it gets a little, it can get a little tricky in the way that they get that stock, but for the most part, yeah.
And when you're raising capital and you're deciding, how much you want to raise, most people say you want to raise about 18 months worth of runway in order to, kind of prolong that next period that you have to go and raise. When you're looking at, putting a value on your company, like you said, I mean, you guys raised very early on. It's just notes on a napkin at this point. How do you put a valuation on that? Is that just something where you just throw out a couple of valuations and see what sticks, or how is it that you guys were able to put a valuation and then convince someone that that's what it was worth?
I mean, the honest answer is, yeah, I think it is. Like you're just convincing people. You can look at market size and, everyone's got a pitch deck, but at the end of the day, you just got to make the sale. So you put it at a number that you think you can hit. That's what I feel is truthful.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember when I was fundraising for my own company, we went in with high on some ones and then we lowered it. And then some we went in low and realized, actually, this is not a good deal anymore. Let's go back higher because we were getting more interest. And you have to kind of play that game. It's like when you decide your pricing for your startup, you can look at competitors and you can see someone and, this company charges, $20 a month. So I'm going to charge 15 or I'm going to charge 40, whatever that is. But a lot of it is just trial and error until you really have that success. And then from there, obviously, then you want to make sure you can continue to raise the value, because if you start getting into down rounds, which again, we'll go into another podcast, that's when you can really start having issues with potential investors. That's something that you want to avoid at all costs.
Yeah. There are so many ways to be successful, and there's so many ways to fail. What I can communicate is not an exact path to either one, but the principles that I think have kept us alive. And those are keep maintaining an open mind and knowing that you're going to have to change what you're doing, and just staying disciplined regardless of that good news or bad news. That's really that's the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. And, really, I do want to be mindful of your time. So we will start to wrap this up in a minute. But just as an entrepreneur that's been successful, been extremely successful with where you are right now and the team that you have and the team that you've built, are there any kind of snippets of advice that you'd give to someone that's just starting off and that's maybe in that situation where you were, 4 or 5 years ago, where you're 28 years old, you're in a company that you enjoy the job, presumably, that you like doing, but you just have that itch to do something different? What kind of advice do you give someone in that situation?
You don't need, this is what worked for me, but find someone to attack this with, and find that right person. Understand that it's It might not be just your best friend. It might not be, it's about compatibility in a different sense. So you need to find a business partner that is in for the long haul and that can handle the bumps along the road. I would also say, get your idea out the door fast. Like do not build this masterpiece because there's a good shot you were wrong in what is actually sticking with the users. So just get it out the door. And just stay level. Watch the highs, watch the lows, but don't get swept away by them.
And because your background obviously is more of a designer as well. So as a designer, were you creating clickable prototypes for your platform even before you built it? Were you able to go in there and using InVision or Helios create these clickable prototypes to actually be able to, like you say, test that market before you built it?
Yeah, for sure. We built them a lot, even more so back in the day in the beginning. Maybe I should pick it up a little more, but even I still build them today, not for the same use case I did back then. Right now I build them more for even development buy-in and for understanding, for team buy-in, so people can understand what we're actually building instead of just looking at these disconnected JPEGs. That doesn't really tell the story. But prototype it, even see if your own idea makes sense. Like throw it around, share the prototype, get it out there for cheap. That's the way to do it.
That's why, a lot of our clients that are looking at fundraising specifically, they come to us to start off with this prototype, and then they will take the prototype, go out and fundraise with that, and then come back for the development. Sense. Yeah, so it allows them to, and I know I don't believe it was something we offered when you guys first started, and obviously with your background, it wouldn't really make sense. But for a lot of our clients that come to us, we'll actually prototype, either a mobile application, web application, form the clickable prototype that they can then go out to either gain investment, gain strategic partnerships, gain early buy-in, and using a variety of smoke screen testing and landing pages, you can actually get a user base built up before you decide to invest heavily in the technology, and it allows you to get a little bit of an indicator as to market validity before you invest significant capital, either your own or investors, into developing a product.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, also, you don't want to put people to sleep when you're given that pitch deck and say it is like the 10th one they've seen that day. They need a little bell and a whistle too. No one's bored when you say, "Hey, I got a prototype. You want to check it out?" That's going to catch attention too. So a lot of reasons to build that.
Pitch decks are cool, but prototypes tend to execute a little bit better. That's what we found with our clients anyway. But no, Zach, I mean, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your hectic schedule to sit down for this quick interview. We will be posting this video and podcast shortly. And if you are out there listening and you're an entrepreneur and would like to be featured, you can reach out to me directly at roach@ironforge.co. Otherwise, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you next time.